Welcome fellow gamers to another retrospective, this time the third planned chapter of the Solid Snake series, Snake Eater, and we take some big changes in the game engine and story, but even more so to the character, which needs some explanation. The two games up to this point in my chronology have centred on Snake's codename Solid, born from the Les Enfants Terribles project. Like his brother Liquid, clones from Zanzibar villain Big Boss, a former Fox agent gone rogue and father to both via his genes. This theme is the gene, meme and now scene core underpinning of each chapter. One had its fate and fear wrapped in the genes of both, determining their own fate before they even took a breath. So was believed by Liquid. Two followed this by the social aspect and a meme, being a single thought or belief created by one or more and passed through the community as an ever-growing theme or ideal. Social engineering in its purest form, the misdirection and deception is key from the game's story and Hideo's cell. In the third it took a huge stride. Part of that was it was designed for the PlayStation 3, but with Sony's infamous next gen starts when we say attitude, they had to adapt and deliver on the PS2, which took much work and toll on the team, engine and machine, which I will cover later. Snake Eater's core is all about the scene, or time and environment, that can and does affect how everything is viewed. The entire game's premise is one of viewpoint and political strings. Everyone is friend or foe, patriot or defector. Snake himself is even unaware of the game he is himself playing, just a pawn in another's, and very wet behind the ears when we meet up with Jack. Newcomers to the Metal Gear Solid series looking to play the Phantom Pain could do no better than start with this game, as it is Big Bosses whose story we close in that, but we meet here for the first time during the Cold War. With it starting off with a nuclear missile fired at a Soviet Union compound by main antagonist Colonel Volgin, driven power mad with the Cold War setting of 1964, trying to win the war. But this is no ordinary missile, for it is American made and as such creates an international incident after Snake is sent in under codename Naked to find and retrieve the scientists working on the Shagohod weapon, an all-terrain mobile nuclear capable tank for Volgin. David Bowie references are made from the Ziggy Stardust alter ego and Major Tom Commander, mirroring the moonwalk race of the time, with Russia and America desperate to achieve the first drop. Echoed more by the Fury being an astronaut complete with suit, Space Odyssey the album is referenced in the early codec chat at the start of the Virtuous mission. While all this happens, Snake's old mentor has defected to Russia and gone rogue. Known only as the Boss, she is as tough as nails, no nonsense professional, but now having turned her back on her country and sided with Volgin, she is a traitor that Snake now must kill for his country, the scene of the time, mirrored perfectly in her speech to him at the end battle.
To make the world one again. The foibles of politics and the march of time can turn friends into enemies just as easily as the wind changes. Ridiculous, isn't it?
And constant hints throughout the game of her true intentions. Within the first few minutes of Snake Eater, its two biggest film influences are front and centre. From the jungle and bare root setting of the game and Snake's First Blood Rambo vibes resonate, echoed in the game's survival core and DIY field repairs. And machine gun equipped helicopter swatting is also on the cards. But the James Bond theme is not only typical Hideo comedy mixed with style, but is actually a great title song with even a Morris Binder type sequence to complete its homage. But it does not stop here. Like 2 using references from Hard Boiled with saxophone music, this also has nods to The Fugitive, Predator, Hellraiser, spaghetti westerns, Mission Impossible, even a sneaky nod to Jack Sparrow in there. Well, Snake's impression of a pirate at least. Yes. But the clear old James Bond movie muse is unmistakable. The early teaser mission to introduce the game's themes and villains, after a title sequence the real mission and game begins. Classic Cold War, double jeopardy love, death, betrayal and world domination are all included. Hideo allows heavy cultural references to seep into his work. The amazing Snatcher is an extreme case of Blade Runner reference, but it is intrinsic to his own DNA game design. You can almost recognise the time period by these popular references in his games. But even now, stepping back to 1964 and playing the role reversal of who we know Big Boss to be up to this point is yet another showing of how nothing can be confirmed or constant, only relevant to the time, stage and point of view. The role reversal in the game is huge, with its entire impact changing Snake to become the devil we know he becomes. Being consumed by anger and revenge, he succumbs to his own demons, a tale we will have the joy to see unfold within the Phantom Pain after our first introduction to him here as a fresh-faced loyal soldier, but still a little wet behind the ears. With the stage set, another counter-spy in Eva, giving Snake a brief flutter of love before heartbreak and receiving that indicative eye patch. Ironically, nearly inflicted by his own mentor, enforcing the scar of his trust and constant reminder to never do so again, putting himself in harm's way to save another. But Eva also serves as another clue to these links and hints for the Phantom Pain. Now, I'm going to warn you here, these are possible spoiler theories I'm coming up with. Nothing concrete, just my own opinions. But if you don't want to have anything possibly spoiled in the story, then please click the link below to skip this section, or 7-minute 57, as I go through my probably way out there theory on this. Now, my theory here is the controversial outfit from Quiet is a clear and easy reference to Eva, and with the love really blooming on the battlefield, the chance that Snake has a daughter but is not aware is a theory I hold, and I await another month to find out. As Hideo stated, the outfit makes sense. In here it was more to mirror the Bond girl attire of the time, but it would be another twist for him to play, as she is the real hero of 5. With the recent Gamescom trailer adding some weight to this, with Snake referencing what seems to be a choice, but in Hideo fashion, it could also be a mimic of the Star Wars scene, of that there is another Skywalker.
No, there's another.
All very intriguing, but I stress it is my opinion and I could be completely wrong. Gameplay is still fixed on stealth, but takes a much bigger leap in implementation, so much so that in Ground Zeroes and the Phantom Pain, combat is built on this, with additions rather than any great changes. The big change for combat here was the CQC, the close quarter combat, that allowed you, if unarmed or holding a single weapon, to engage enemies, chokehold, quickly take them down, use them as human shields, or quickly dispatch them from your path, fatally or not. This had a touch on in one of the later boss battles, depending on how aggressive and how many people you sent onto the other side. The game copied some of the style from the popular show 24 at the time in its combat and some of the editing in the scenes, with it being most likely how Hideo decided that its star Kiefer Sutherland would later become the voice of Big Boss for Ground Zeroes and the Phantom Pain, replacing fan favourite and Solid Snake star David Hayter, or maybe alongside him, or maybe not. This was so weaving into the same mechanic of stealth, radar, well sonar this time, but amplified more so with the new setting. A big change was not only the shift from urban environments to its jungle setting, but also the entire start, dropping you miles out and having to work in and infiltrate your objective, another similarity with the latest and final chapter. But this dense land needed some big changes to both game design and engine. Now you had a constant stamina bar which dictated how you healed or your health level worked. Letting this drop too low and Snake would grow slower, health would drop, and even a grumbling stomach giving you away in its new stealth camo options. Having a stealth gaze let you know how visible you were to enemies. Swapping gear and face paint dependent on locale was vital to stay hidden, along with enabling you to individualise your character with clothes and paint carried over in all the real-time cutscenes. Still a rarity sadly in games today. Another sign of how forward-thinking Hideo is, complete with some comical choices. This did not stop here though. You had to hunt and source your own food or flora and fauna to survive. Killing local wildlife for food meant you could top up your stamina bar, but be careful, as the wrong food could poison you. Leaving meat too long would result in it going bad. Each food had a level, meaning you needed more than just the same food, or you became malnutritioned. You saw less benefit from the food, basically. Taking the Rambo influence to new heights meant Snake needed to heal himself from injury, using bandages, sprays and splints, all in the correct manner, otherwise it would not heal, leaving scars, a limp, and even lowering stamina levels. It really made you think, and again for its time, was so far ahead of others. It even had missions where you have to lead another and use them in cooperative play, being almost RPG-like in its execution at times. Even playing for too long a sitting without saving would lower your resolve, which you could see from Snake's weary stance in the Survivor hub. But it was as hard or more so on the engine, with the last game all being set in a very clinical stage meant the collision detection engine could be much simpler, but not in this very organic setting. Now ground was uneven, bushes, trees, logs, swamps and more all meant that it had to handle a much more complicated and vertical environment map. The entire portion was rewritten to accommodate this, allowing you to climb trees, hide in logs, sneak above or below, and even dress as a crocodile in a swamp. Snake always was a snappy dresser. With it having interactive grass and foliage, still now not overly common, your clothes got muddy or wet depending on the area you had to walk through, weather and time of day changed as you play, animals, patrols, and overall AI was another step up from the previous game. You really had to have your wits about you and learn and apply the skills throughout. First person view was key. It was also the first game to allow you to complete it without alerting or killing anyone, well aside the bosses that is, something I have sadly never achieved. The game also made a huge shift in its visual display from the last chapter. Animation improved on faces and bodies, clothes, face geometry increased, but really the biggest leap was texture work. Comparing the much simpler shaded polygons from 2 against the new younger looking Snake was stark. Many did not believe this was a PS2 game when shown at E3. It was another leap on. Employing tricks still in use now, some seen in the last game. Clothes flap in the wind, DOF was improved over the last game's Gaussian filter, sound was also treated to an upgrade supporting full Dolby 2 surround. It was a real cinematic experience. Harry Gregson-Williams returned for the theme and game soundtrack, and like the epic one delivered in 2, it was another masterpiece. Able to stand on its own and combined with the work in the game just cemented the entire cinematic game style it started back with the very first game. With the jungle setting, new collision engine, higher polygon models and quantity, along with additional sound processing, improved AI, greater texture work, with much more overdraw and overall leap from such an epic technical achievement as 2, it had to come at a cost, and it did, with the old frame rate being of 60 being halved now to 30 for the entire game. In play at least, or the same PAL 5025 sacrifice you saw from my last video. The performance throughout was sadly not as stable as its forefather. A big reason was the game's original target being on a much more powerful machine in the PS3. This meant that the design aim was not to be sacrificed to allow for this. The setting uses one of the PS2's strongest assets, overdraw, or as it's more modernly known, alpha blending. The dense trees, shrubs, light and shadows all worked the machine very hard. Pushing this much geometry and draws caused the frame rate to tank at points along with its strong post effects work. With my bespoke tool you can see lows of 9, but these only really come in the effect heavy cutscenes, but the flamethrower and other big effects can see dips in the low teens during gameplay. The engine used the same methods from 2, with a full 50 FPS still happening on very rare occasions in cutscenes, but like gameplay, mostly running at 25 with the next stage causing half that, dipping to 12 or 13, 15 on NTSC versions. This line would be flat were it not for the held frame for this PAL version, but it certainly was not such a solid performer as its earlier incarnation. The battle with the Fury is a standout of how bad it gets, with the entire game showing off the old slowdown, which used to signify when shit got real. But here it does hamper the gameplay and demonstrates the bulges and split seams of the PS2 as it tries its level best to push those pixels as best it can. But even though it was by Hideo's own high standards his worst performer, it never irritates or distracts throughout the entire game. As I say, the huge wealth of cutscenes are the worst constant offender, but it can at points, as above, in the mountains and some other examples. It was an easy improvement to make when the ironic remasters hit the Xbox 360 and intended PS3 to a native 720p boost from the PS2's upscale resolution of 640 by 480 as per the last game and most of the machine's library. But the return of 60 FPS does help the game and performance well, and if you have the choice to play again before the new game, it is the better place to experience it. But the same intelligent and logical puzzle progression and boss battles rang throughout its veins. Some, like the Pain, are simple to beat, others, like the end sniper battle, could be beaten by saving and quitting the game and returning in 7 days, or moving your PS2's date on, where he will have died from old age. You can even avoid it altogether if you are a quick and accurate shot earlier in the game. Trying to save mid-battle would get you booted back to travel and restart. It was a grueling boss fight you had to endure in one sitting. Running around and hoping would quickly result in being picked off. Instead, you have to think like a sniper, be slow, tactful, use the equipment you had, and soon you sneak up on him and put him to rest. A tough but satisfying battle indeed. Saving and playing another day recovered health and even healed wounds. His comedy rang with the start, allowing him to have a Raiden mask on, which also was a look a little later in the game. The group of enemies all follow the enduring stages Snake faced in the game. The pain, the end, the fury, the sorrow. The Psycho Mantis feels come from the Sorrow battle, adding in the standard Hideo mix of horror and paranormal. Volgin and his base all feel more familiar, but still supremely satisfying. Working through the base disguised is still such a common method in stealth games now. And at times it shows off the epic feel of the game as you feel like a lone man sneaking through this huge complex and open area, a clear indication of where we have now gone with the huge open environments available to us in the forthcoming Phantom Pain. But the epic final and battle with the boss across the fields is not only superbly atmospheric but poetic in its delivery, capped off with the iconic boss battle salute as the mantle is passed and Big Boss is born. But it still falls foul to the Achilles heel of Hideo Kojima and his love of the cinematic, and it does intrude heavily on the game and the flow of some of the combat sequences. Playing it now, you are regularly interrupted for very long periods of time, and even though the cutscenes, some of them are very good, some of the poor dialogue does feel a little cheesy, and some of this intentional at times. You can end up watching this again and cringing at certain points.
We did it!
You take care of the driving.
Yeah?
Yeah, I trust you. On one condition, though, leave the fighting to me.
You got it. I was getting tired of running away anyway.
Eva, let's do it.
Some of the cutscenes go on too long and they intrude in certain parts too brief and too quickly to allow you to get a full feel of what's going on. A lot of the action does get taken away from you, but a lot of them are very enjoyable, and the story and characters all feel sufficiently weighted that you do actually care what happens to them. And the building of Big Boss is quite clear throughout the game, although his ability with the ladies is a little lacking when we first meet him.
Can't even eat a snake during a mission, huh?
I wouldn't mind eating you.
Here. It's different from the Mauser. When you're using a two-hand grip, you have to be careful where you put your hands or your fingers will get burned by the exhaust gas from the cylinder gap.
Overall though, the biggest disappointment is the actual enemies themselves. They are well crafted and have a good weight to them in their style and design, but this is unfortunately wasted by the boss battles being quickly dispatched in what seems to be a very collected together group section in the game, with long gaps before the end. And the end battle with Volgin is just a little too long and trying to be too epic, which makes it feel a little cheesy. Overall, the actual characters themselves in design are great, but again you never feel that connection with them that you should, and hopefully this is something that we'll pick up in the Phantom Pain, as we seem to have some references to Volgin and others in the new game, which we may yet have to see when the game releases in a couple of weeks' time. It truly is a masterpiece of a game that still stands now as I feel the pinnacle of the greatness of Hideo Kojima and the series, but this yet may be exceeded with his final Metal Gear Solid game that brings the saga full circle with its originating father and true boss, and possibly his ultimate end at the hands of his own son. Join me in the next episode of my retrospective building on the latest game as we take a full-on deep delve into Metal Gear Solid 4 and back with Solid Snake as he takes on one last mission, this time on the PS3, that may just bring his story to a close and an end that may come sooner than expected. As always, if you guys and girls enjoyed this, then please hit the like and subscribe button. It really helps me immensely. I appreciate each and every one of you that does. Please leave your thoughts and your feedback below. I always like to hear what you guys have to say and take it into account for future videos, so please give as much feedback as you can. I shall leave you with some old brothers in arms meeting for the first time, be they friend or foe. You guys and girls take care, and I'll see you soon on the next one.